Excitement has the same energy pattern as fear does. The difference is that fear makes you want to bolt for the door and energy draws you forward. So what if you were excited instead? What if this feeling that of discomfort, so you're feeling out of your comfort zone, so something has changed. That's all it really is most of the time, is a signal that something has changed, something has shifted and is different. So if you examine what's different, well, maybe it's excitement. Maybe it's something to look forward to anticipate to. Well, then you get to choose. Well, do I want it to be a fearful feeling, or do I want it to be an excited feeling? If you've ever felt you're too much or somehow not enough, this podcast is for you. I'm Sue, your Magnificence mentor. Welcome to Magnify Your Magnificence, a space to release fear, to quiet your self-doubt, and step fully into the brilliance that's already yours. Let's magnify it together. Greetings, my magnificent ones. Sue Paulson here, your Magnificence mentor, and we're back with another episode of Magnify with Sue. I've got my magnifying glass out, and today we are going to magnify the topic of fear and see if we can put it in its proper place. So let's start at the beginning. What is fear really? Fear is a signal. It's a device that's hardwired into our physical bodies to protect us, relatively vulnerable humans, from danger, to basically keep us surviving. So it's a necessary, vital part of our makeup. And of course, it's been hardwired since caveman days, when there were threats of saber-toothed tigers and who knows what else. So the way this works is, as you know, and as I've talked about before, the body is a communication device. It sends signal to us all the time. And of course, when fear gets triggered, there's a signal that comes through the body. So think about when you've been scared and the signals that are there. So you might have all of a sudden a flutter or a pounding in your heart. Your breathing might become a little more labored. Maybe you have a stomach upset. It's like acid flooding your stomach. Maybe your knees start to shake. Your body feels a little bit like jelly. So those are all signals that fear has come into your being for whatever reason. All right. So then, of course, the mind gets engaged, and you make a decision, sometimes an unconscious physical reaction, to move into defense mode, to fight, to flee, to freeze. Whatever the danger happens to be, your body will want you to respond appropriately to save your life. So we need that signal still in our bodies. There's plenty of dangers out there on the street, and sometimes even in your own home. You know, you have a rickety ladder that you meant to deal with, and you get up on it and it starts to creak and sway, and whoa, danger, danger, danger. And so then you do something about that. So it's a vital thing that we need. So why is fear a challenge in our lives as the magnificent beings that we're wired to be? How does it get in our way? Well, we let it get in our way. We have this mind that is part of the survival mechanism, we could talk about it as the ego that wants to keep us safe and is constantly looking out there. Okay, where might there be danger, and what do I need to guard against or avoid or whatever? And of course, we have an imagination. Well, I don't know about you, but I have a big imagination, and I can imagine things that aren't there and were never there. And I mean, that's what creative ability taps into, right? Is our imagination. So you go to the movies, there's this fantastical thing going on in front of you that may not be real at all, but they've done it in such a way that you believe what you're seeing because it catches your imagination, and off you go on that journey with wherever that movie wants to take you. So where the challenge comes in, though, is when our minds and our imaginations grab hold of that fear and interpret it in a certain way. Now, let's back up a second. Animals in our world all have the fear triggers as well. So if they sense danger in any way, shape, or form through their physical senses, through the sense of smell, through their hearing, through their sight, vibrations in the ground, whatever, they sense any kind of danger, they immediately go on high alert and are prepared in that split second without thought to move to a place of safety. So whether it's they run, whether they fight, whether they freeze in place, you might have noticed rabbits on your path that will just go very, very still, like, oh, you can't see me, you can't see me, you can't see me. And then if they feel that you're not physically threatening them, then they might just hop off and get out of further potential danger. So they're wired to do that. The gift in that animal kingdom is that once the danger has passed, they just go back to normal. Their bodies just stop sending the stress hormones throughout the system that activate so that they can physically carry on and get out of danger. And then they're just back in this nice state of balance and everything's peaceful and calm, and they go back to grazing or whatever they were doing before. With humans, though, depending on what came into your psyche and your awareness and consciousness from the time you were little, our minds can just take off and go in all kinds of directions without thought that may or may not be accurate, may or may not be true. And of course, if we add a little imagination into that, oh boy, it can cause a huge challenge. So let's start with a very simple example about how that works and how I've seen it work. And maybe you've experienced this too. So likely, if most children, at least in North America, were taught from a very young age, as young as they could understand, don't talk to strangers. Because, of course, parents had scanned their environment and maybe they heard a story on the news about a child being abducted. Maybe they're very fearful about obviously something happening to their precious child. So there was this blanket. A child at 2 or 3 it can't really reason and understand why a parent says this. So we don't know that. We just listen to our parents. Don't talk to strangers. Don't talk to strangers. Don't talk to strangers. So immediately that a stranger comes into our vicinity, we're going, oh, I don't know them. And maybe we, if we're in our mother's arms, we jerk back and turn into her shoulder and or maybe start to cry or make a sign of distress or whatever. And mama, no, it's okay. And then soothes us, and then away we go. But of course, this message gets repeated over and over and over again. So it becomes part of us. We don't even think about the idea of don't talk to strangers. So you sit in your seat on the bus and you're not making eye contact. You're not talking to the person sitting next to you. That's just the way it is. Now, let's fast forward to you being in grade 7, let's say, and you're a preteen. Well, of course, all your friendships in class, relationships in the teen years are vital to an individual's well-being, and we want to be well looked upon and well thought of, and not be embarrassed and all these kinds of things. And your teacher announces, without any preparation to move into that arena, 2 weeks from now, you get to do a talk in front of the rest of the class on whatever topic you choose in this area. And immediately you're going, whoa, okay, I sort of know some of the people in my class, but I don't really know them. And this message plays unconsciously in the back of your head. Okay, you're going to be talking to strangers because you've never talked to them out loud to a whole group like this. It's been maybe one-on-one or in groups of 2 or 3, but all of a sudden there's going to be 30 faces staring at you, and the fear just bam, triggers. All right. Now, if you've had no preparation to soothe the fear or work through the fear, which 9.5 out of 10 of us have not, then that fear builds as the date gets closer and closer and closer. And of course, if you don't do as well at the front, you make a mistake, you drop all your little cue cards, or you stumble over your words, or you're frozen in front of the class and they start to laugh, that seals the deal right there. And so then you may vow at that point, I am never speaking in front of a group of people again. That's it. That's too scary. That's so unsafe. And your whole nervous system agrees 100%. And so you never do. So then we're going to fast forward again. You're in the work world. Now, I actually had a student in my university class who had to take public speaking as part of my class. She could not pass if she didn't get up and present in front of the group. And she confessed to me in a private moment. She said, when I was a little bit younger, I had a boss who wanted me to do a presentation on the company finances because he was going to be away and I was his second in command. And he wanted me to do this in his stead. And she looked him square in the eye and she said, if you make me do that, I will have to quit. And I'm kind of, really? And she said, I was so afraid to do it. And I had vowed I was not ever going to speak. And I guess she had had an incident in her earlier years that really seeded that whole idea in her head. And so she just wouldn't do it. But of course, in my class, she's older. She has a vested interest in how to maybe get through this obstacle. And I'm saying to these young adults that are soon going to be entering the workforce, I said, look, you can run, but you can't hide. I know most of you probably skipped this class in high school and took a 0, but I said, you won't get your credits if you don't get up and participate in the speaking. Of course, they all did. But what I did is I began over the time frame that we had between when they had to present and when they were actually, before then, to help them examine, well, what's the fear all about? What are some strategies and techniques to deal with that so that when it comes time, so we work through that process. So it's a similar process to what you need to do with any fear that's controlling you. So I want you to admit to yourself that fear in lots of instances has just stopped you in your tracks from moving forward. Maybe you had a big ambition or a dream to start a particular kind of business or to move out into the world in a bigger way, to be visible when it felt kind of terrifying to be visible. And the second you had that thought, your fear-based mind, the fear that was in control, just jumps right all over that and says, oh, no. That way be dragons. Like you don't want to go there. Well, so you pull back. And I know I've done it. Absolutely. I've spent a good part of my life being a seriously calculated risk taker. Like if I enter a room of that, like a networking event that's full of strangers that I don't know, I stand at the entrance and I scan the room. Okay, what are the vibes? What am I feeling? What am I sensing? What am I noticing? And of course, if I see a familiar face, guess where I go? Right to that person that I know to ease my fears, because I got the same message growing up as you did. Don't talk to strangers. And even though I've largely dealt with that little program wants to run unless I deactivate it. What we want to look at. So is there an antidote to this? Because fear is just flat out debilitating. And if it goes beyond what it was originally designed to do, which was keep us safe in that moment, if it isolates us, if it prevents us from going out in public, if it prevents us from driving our car in the winter while the roads might be icy, or anything that stops us, is worth examining, is worth saying, well, if it's interfering with my quality of life and my growing sense that I'm way more powerful than ever I thought I was, and I'm way more magnificent. Sue keeps telling me, "You're magnificent." Well, what's in my way? Well, fear lots of times is in our way. And not only is it in our way, it's in control. Well, I want to be sovereign over my own domain here. I don't want fear to rule me. So fear and I have lots of conversations to say, okay, what's really going on here? Now, different from analyzing it and thinking it to death and saying, oh, so you really, or being in denial. Oh no, there's no reason to have any fear, blah, blah, blah. Well, it doesn't work. I haven't found that that works very well. But if I connect my mind with my heart, so I go into my heart space and begin to feel this fear, first of all, and realize that the body sensations that I'm getting are not going to kill me. I mean, it's just the body saying, look, I'm really uncomfortable right now. And so I start to maybe take some deep breaths to begin to soothe those body sensations that are just wanting to keep me safe. That's all they're wanting to do. And so, okay, and then as I'm engaging and I'm feeling this fear and just accepting that it's there, okay, yeah, I'm feeling fear right now. Then, as with any emotion, this too shall pass. So as it eases a little bit, then engage the mind with some questions such as, so what is it that I'm most fearful about? And and maybe if it's in relation to having to speak an uncomfortable truth to someone or to put yourself out there in a way you never did before, that doesn't really matter what it is. It's to sit with it and say, so what is it the thing that I'm most fearful? Am I fearful of failure? Well, yeah, I don't want to be embarrassed. I don't want to look silly, or I don't want the other person to take it badly or hurt their feelings or whatever. And okay, yeah, well, that seems valid. But what's the worst that can happen if any of those things occurred? And you think about, well, what is the worst that could actually happen in that moment, and realize, well, maybe it's not as bad as I thought. And so this is where our imagination can come in, and we buy trouble, right? Well, this could escalate into this, or that could happen. And so, okay, how likely is that? Well, I don't think that's really likely. And so when you start doubting the truth of what your imagination and your mind wants you to believe about in relation to this fear, then you have an opportunity to shift and have a different perspective about it, have a different perspective about what you're feeling. So, for example, excitement has the same energy pattern as fear does. The difference is that fear makes you want to bolt for the door and energy draws you forward. So what if you were excited instead? What if this feeling that of discomfort, so you're feeling out of your comfort zone, so something has changed. That's all it really is most of the time, is a signal that something has changed, something has shifted and is different. So if you examine what's different, well, maybe it's excitement. Maybe it's something to look forward to anticipate, to whatever. Well, then you get to choose. Well, do I want it to be a fearful feeling, or do I want it to be an excited feeling? Well, what if I decided, well, this is actually excitement, maybe it's mixed in with this fear. And so, because I want to do a good job. Well, that's okay. But you've shifted that. You've become conscious now, out of the unconscious. Oh, this fear has got a hold of me and I can't let it go. And I'm never going to be able to change this. And so I just won't do whatever it was that's right in front of me. No. You say, well, now that's different. And then, well, what if, and you, as you begin to look at new possibilities and entertain different notions, then the fear may just begin to take a back seat. So here's what I know and what I've observed with my public speaking students as an example, because public speaking is still in the top 10 of biggest fears in the world, next to falling and snakes. I get the one about snakes, and yeah, falling I'm not that fond of either. But the public speaking, you go, okay. So here's what I noticed. When one of my participants got up in front of the class, and I'm watching them intently, I'm watching for signs, and I'm kind of keeping an eye on my timer to see how long it takes before they move from their internal focus of nerves and maybe a little bit of raw terror there outward to connecting with their audience once they get engaged in their topic. No more than 30 seconds. Well, can you hang on for 30 seconds to get to the next best part of what you're going to do? I think we can. 30 seconds is not a long time. It might feel like forever in those 30 seconds, like, oh, wow, but the minute that you shift from it's all about me and my fear and my nerves and my whatever into, well, I'm here to give this information or share this or be open and vulnerable with this person or get on that roller coaster, whatever it is, then you can enjoy the ride and then the excitement can wash in because there's room for it. And there's room for then the exhilaration after the fact when you say, I did it. So I really want to encourage you this week and this month to put fear in the place that it belongs. Instead of having it always be front and center and in your way, blocking your path, preventing you from going where you most want to go, where your heart is yearning to go, where you really feel compelled to go, the vision that you have for your life, whatever that is, then deal with the fear and move into your heart space, have a conversation with that fear and accept that you are more than that you can move through whatever it is. All right, that's your challenge for this week. I hope that's helpful. I'd love you to subscribe to Magnify with Sue. We're building a list for our newsletter that will come out weekly. And of course, if you subscribe, then you get notifications when our weekly broadcasts come out. So in the meantime, go be your magnificent selves, and we'll see you on the next episode of Magnify with Sue. That's it for today's episode of Magnify Your Magnificence. If this resonated, hit subscribe so you never miss what's coming next. And if you're ready to go even deeper, come join me at magnifywithsue.com. I'd love to keep walking this path with you.